Good morning, everyone. It's Meteorologist Joe Cioffi, and I'm just doing things on the fly. You can take a look at what we have right in front of you here, which is the National Weather Service enhanced data display, where we can kind of mix things up and put radars and satellites on top of surface observations, and we can see that the eye of Hurricane Irma, the eye wall, is over the Lower Keys, and Key West is inside that eye wall. Irma is a Category 4 hurricane on the low end of the Category 4 hurricane scale. Top winds are 130 miles an hour, and it is moving northward. So give me just 1 second here. I'm just kind of jumping on without really getting myself at least a little bit organized. I hope the audio is all okay, so if you guys can let me know. Good morning, Earl, and good morning to Martin, who have joined on. There we go. All right, so let's take a look at what's happening here at the moment. You've got the radar superimposed here on the geography. It's a little hard to see, but you can see the extent of the Keys and the wind observations. What I've done is I've just basically taken off everything except the wind. And Key West stations both of them are reporting sustained winds of 50, one gusting to 66, and one gusting to 79. So we're seeing wind gusts in excess of hurricane force. We have this particular station here, which is, sometimes these things identify it and sometimes they don't. So this was National Key Deer is what I caught, but then it just kind of went out. Let me see if I can get that to turn on again. It could be that the station just kind of, went out at the moment. After the last reported wind that's there is a gust to 86. We have this one is now just this ob station is just to the east of Key West with gusts to 70. And oh, I see what it's doing. It's opening it up in terms of a graph for me. But I'm see if we can get this to show. See what the wind, if it'll graphically plot it. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. I can see from the wind scale in terms of the sustained winds at least, and we'll put up the wind gust, and I'll take the temperatures off. Gusts almost the gust to 86 here is the peak wind that was recorded at 7:38. So just about a little over half hour ago, we had gusts to 86 miles per hour at this particular location. The sustained winds are up around 50, is now up at 51 and still increasing, by the way. So that is a National Key Deer, is the reporting station. The ob time here, 7:38. So 51 gusting to 86. We are seeing, this might be Marathon Key, I'm not sure. So let me just, or Vaca Key, one of the others. But this is Key Largo North, east-southeast at 40, gusting to 65. Going to come up into the mainland now as we head up toward Florida, the Florida mainland, in and around the Miami area. I'll try and zoom in just a little bit, and you can see a lot of gusts inland, not even just on the immediate coast, but inland. Gusts to 55, 53, 56. We have a gust to 66 at this particular reporting station. This coastal station has a gust to 87 miles an hour. So this is right up the coast in the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. Gust to 70. I can't seem to bring up, this is called Lazy Lake, but that wind ob looks a little weird. Trying to get to some of these observations to come up. All right, so Miami Beach. This is also a bad ob. It's obviously not 8 gust to 19. That makes no sense at all. So that 86 gust is coming from a reporting station in the greater Miami area. So we're seeing some very strong winds, and we're also seeing some strong winds in inland areas as well. as we go into South Florida with gusts of 41, 48, 50. The 50 is at Okeechobee Raws. I'm not familiar with where that is, but a gust of 50. Up the west coast, we've got gusts generally 40 to 45. Here's the NEARS meteorological station at Rookery Bay, near Naples, Florida, 22 gusting to 45. Gust, all the winds here. One of the things we're going to pay attention to now, of course, among others, among so many things we're paying attention to, is the wind direction. We're going to see if the winds, if they start turning toward the north along the coast up from Naples on northward. It'll tell us that the center of Irma, the eye, will come in somewhere here in southwest Florida, the southwesternmost part of the state, or whether if these winds start to turn more to the south, that'll be telling us that the eye is going to be passing to the west. And by the way, okay, so just getting these things updated now. So, gust of 77 at Key West, gust of 79 at the two stations reporting inside Key West. It looks like the sustained wind is 60, 62, gusting to 77 at Key West Airport at 8 o'clock, where they are inside the eye wall. So let me close this out, and we'll start to take a look at a few other things as we move along. So here's the satellite loop of Irma, and last night we saw a northward component of motion begin, and that has continued this morning. The motion has actually been pretty steady. Looks like north or just a little bit west of north. There we go. Yeah, you can see the eye coming on over the Keys. And the motion, it looks to me like to be about 340 degrees on the heading, moving toward the north-northwest. And it's moving at a pretty good clip. So this is going to, we're going to continue to see weather conditions deteriorate across the entire state today as this moves on up. And Eric P. Telling us that Key West reporting a wind gust of 90 miles an hour on Twitter right now. So, some folks decided not to leave the Keys. It isn't even a matter of whether they make it through, through all of this. But I would imagine that access to the Keys is going to be cut off for quite a while with the one roadway getting in and out being pretty much water covered all the way through. So, Profran Roach, a lot of the a lot of those the live stream cameras are not working, and Mick LeCladdon, you can't make that judgment. You don't know. We're watching the obs come in, and where the obs are and where necessarily the strongest winds are not necessarily the same thing. The strongest winds are in a narrow band. If you're going to sit here an armchair quarterback, be my guest, but I have no interest in getting further involved with a conversation like that. You want to criticize, go right ahead and sit in your quarterback chair and do that. And the National Weather Service team in Key West stayed. It's quite courageous of them. And, that's great. These observations help us trying to figure out where these things are. Danville Boost, is South Florida going to be safe? Well, at this point, the Category 3 hurricane is bearing down on South Florida, so it'll be what it'll be. Hopefully, it'll turn out fine. And that's another thing with regards to the criticism about, quote, way overplaying. If that turns out to be the case, then that's good news. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. If it winds up underperforming what the wind speeds that was found by the Air Force Reconnaissance aircraft. I mean, this is stuff that's not made up, and you're not actually there again inside the eye wall. So what's being reported at the airports is not necessarily being reported. Is not necessarily the highest wind. Good morning to you, Linda T. And good morning to JPHO. So you know what? Let's stop the nonsense and just keep on going with this. So here's the eye on the satellite. And actually, the actual core of the eye wall is, if judging from the satellite view, is actually to the east of Key West. So we are probably seeing winds, the strongest winds in an area that's in between the observation posts, which are pretty far apart. Looking at the Key West radar, you can see where the eye wall that extends from just to the west of Marathon Key back over to Key West. So right in this very long stretch is where you are seeing the strongest winds and the heaviest rains. The eye is not as well defined at the moment as it was during the night when it was moving over the Florida Straits. So at least one of the upsides to all of this was the disruption of the circulation over the mountains of Cuba did play a role in perhaps preventing the storm from being as strong as it could have been. If it had, moving right in the middle of the Florida Straits and avoided Cuba completely, we would probably be dealing with a much stronger storm. And also the fact that the pressure continues to be a bit out of whack with the wind. That lowest pressure of 930 millibars could easily support winds of 145 or 150, but the reconnaissance aircraft has been reporting the top winds at 130, and we do have a plane there at the moment, so we can see exactly what's going on with them. Now, this was the Air Force reconnaissance reports from overnight, where the pressure dropped from 932, 1, 2, 3, 4. They made 5 passes, went from 932 to 929 in the 5 passes, and you can see the gradual turn of the track northwest and then more toward the north. So I'm going to get the new recon and put it in here. So just bear with me 1 second, and we can take a look and see what's going on with the new mission that's there right now. And here we go. Just going to take a minute to load here. There we go. So we do have a pressure now of 931, so it's actually come up 2 millibars. And when we look at the wind field, we have a band of wind at 113 to 137 knots on the northwest side, and we also have it on the southeast side. So it's quite likely that winds in between Key West and Marathon Key, where we have no observations to speak of that are working, at least, they're probably inside that belt of 100-knot plus winds. So we'll see from future passes now what's going to happen once the eye clears the Keys and then starts to head toward southwest Florida, Fort Myers, Naples, and the plotting points here are critical in terms of the track, because the north-northwest track, is it closer to 360 degrees? Is the heading more 330? That's going to change a lot of things along the way, including the storm surge profiles through all of this. So it's very important with regards to what's happening here with regards to the actual heading of Irma as it moves on up. No, Dash Smith, this could not hit New Orleans. This is not going to be moving to the west or west-northwest. It is moving northward, okay, and that's pretty clear. James, NASCAR fan, good morning to you too, from North Belmore. So you are right nearby. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. We've been going over what's going on this morning. Eric P. Snowstorms last year and this hurricane have been great opportunities to learn from me. That's terrific. I'm glad that you're getting some value out of this. I mean, that's what this is all about, really. Just trying to show you just exactly how this all works. You don't make this stuff out of thin air, and it's a very, very sometimes it's a very difficult process, and it can be one that you would consider an ordeal, particularly if you're dealing with something that you're forecasting for your own particular area. This has been a little bit easier for me in terms of let's call it the pressure that's on me when it's if this were affecting me, then it just mentally becomes a bit more of an ordeal. You just want to really make sure that you get everything spot on, and not that I don't want it spot on now, but not having to worry about my own things in my own house and everything else from that standpoint makes it a bit simpler to approach. Ethan Kerr about I think the hurricane could strengthen any more. It's certainly possible. It certainly we're not seeing the rapid strengthening, but we edged down to about 929 millibars. There's still the opportunity to strengthen. Diane Buzzout, thank you very much for hitting the super chat. I can get myself a cup of coffee. Thank you very much. Actually, I am going to have to refill my cup in just a second. And thank you, Dave, for doing an excellent. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. From Manitoba, Canada, thank you for being on. I had somebody from Cambodia on last night, and I think Guatemala the night before. I was getting that international audience. Okay, so and thank you for those of you who have been hitting the super chat and buying me a cup of coffee every once in a while. That's really great. I really appreciate it. Let's move on and take a look at what's going on with some of the local radars. So we have Key West, Florida. So again, it looks like the strongest winds are between Marathon Key and Key West. We'll jump now to the Miami radar, where we have tornado warnings up right now. I actually had tornado warnings up. You see the boxes that appear and disappear, and we are going to see quite a bit of severe weather developing today, especially later this afternoon in interior Florida. I think there'll be numerous tornadoes. It looks like we also have some kind of warning now up for the westernmost keys in and around Key West. I can't really delineate the color of that box. If it's a tornado, I don't know what kind of warning that is. Let me just really fast take a look at that. Eric P., thank you very much for hitting Super Chat this morning. I really appreciate it. I get to have 2 cups of coffee. Awesome. All right, let me just see what kind of warning that is. Everything's moving really, really at a snail's pace with regards to the internet here this morning. Okay, it seems that it is okay. All right, this is one of those things where you've got a hurricane warning up, so they put up an extreme wind warning. I don't even know what that means. So let's see. This is off the Doppler radar. Indicated extreme winds if you're in the lower keys, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't tell you what what the wind speeds are. So okay, hey guys on the Weather Service, you got to kind of indicate what the wind speeds you're talking about. Extreme winds. So maybe if you put the speeds on there, it would it would be kind of useful. All right. So anyway, at least we know it's not a tornado warning there, but you can see how the boxes pop up, and we're going to see quite a bit of that today. The rain extends up to Naples over to Fort Myers. We also had, looks like some severe weather, severe thunderstorm or special marine warnings popping up for the West Palm Beach area. So again, this is at 8:30 in the morning, so I don't want somebody that's looking at this later on to think that it's the tornado watches and warnings are up for the time frame that you're watching in. So you check the local radars out for the National Weather Service websites. All right, so let's jump now. Oh, by the way, on the Miami radar, you can see the eye also visible on the Miami radar. And when we look at the Tampa Bay radar, we're now getting weather moving into Tampa and Sarasota and on up the East Coast, Melbourne to Daytona Beach, to getting some rain bands moving up into north central Florida. And there's a pretty solid band that just moved out of Port Charlotte and then extends westward back to Fort Lauderdale, and that's swinging on up toward the north. So that pretty much takes care of the radar. Why don't we take a look at the forecast tracks and the models? A couple of them actually, it looks like a couple of them have kind of adjusted a little bit to the east on the overnight run. It appears that the tracks are either along or just in or just offshore into the Panhandle and on up north and west. That part of the equation continues, so that seems to be unchanged here. I'm just going to freshen this since we are after 12 Z Greenwich time, noon Greenwich time, so we might have a new update here. Those were from 6Z. Let me try again. And no, so this is the, still the 6Z model track guidance. Again, all pretty much uniform. So everything is moving right along according to plan. So let's jump over to the overnight models and get those to load up. And we'll take a look. We'll start with the NAM model. And let me pull up a region here that would be suitable. Okay, so here we have the NAM model on the, I have it on hour 14, so I will move it back to hour 1. And we'll move it, we'll put it in motion for you. So it's a little bit on the slow side, folks, so just be patient here. There we go. And you can see the track taking it into southwest Florida. Looks like the NAM might have been just a shade. The NAM's been the furthest east of all these model runs lately. It looks like it might have shifted just ever so slightly to the west. Right now, you know, that's really, it's critical in terms of storm surge to see exactly and how the storm surge plays out in terms of the landfall. So you know, that's really important here. So these subtle shifts of a handful of miles are really going to make a huge difference in what the absolute outcome is going to be, again, regarding the storm surge. So, you know, this is very important that they get it right. That part is, you know, you get it as correct as you can. I'm just jumping back and forth here with you guys, so I want to make sure I catch all your questions. Fort Pierce has had over 10 inches of rain in 4 hours. Wow. That's quite a bit. Yeah, some of these rain bands are going to be producing excessive rains in some areas for sure, especially east of the center. Rainfall and flooding in Miami. Amy John, I'm watching. You know, I do have. I have CNN on, and I did happen to see a live shot earlier closer to the water. The water is rising along the shore. It's up to the tops of the docks. I'm not sure when high tide is occurring, but it looked like there was the beginning of some tidal surge flooding there in the Miami area. Let's see. Key West is getting slammed. That is correct. Let me see if I have a new observation from Key West to share with you. Just a second here to go to my have it open, and we have gusts to 82 being reported by one of the reporting stations there, not the airport. Let me see if I, you know, if they would just make this a little easier to deal with on these interactive tools. But they don't, unfortunately. Key West is gusting to 82 miles an hour, sustained at 64, gusting to 82 miles an hour as of 8:18 a.m. And I'm seeing a lot of the observation stations on the Keys now. There are only 3 left that I'm getting observations from. The rest of them are all down. So, when we look at I'm going to put the interactive tool on back. We'll come back to the weather models in just a second. I want to go back to, hopefully it didn't reset. Pleased that it did not reset. And that's good. Okay, thank you. You can see here we have the Gustus 82, Gustus 63. There are stations here all along the Keys, but they're not reporting now, so we have no idea what's happening. In addition, here's the eye wall, and you see the bright reds here. That is a very heavy band of rain that's coming in, and I would venture to say that winds inside this band area is where you're seeing winds in excess of 100 knots. So let's see as we get closer to landfall in southwest Florida what we're going to wind up with in terms of these strong winds and the tidal surge and everything else. So everything's kind of just bearing down now on South Florida. I want to check that with a recon again. We might have a little bit more of a wind profile, and you can see here the belt of winds on the southeast side, and that is moving more toward Marathon Key than it is toward Key West. And the winds there, 113 to 137 knots. In that band, and I'm waiting to see if we can have a second pressure reading here. Let's just give this a refresh just in case we have some new data. Again, I apologize for the fact that everything seems to be on the slow side to load here. And yep, just having some problems loading all this. So there we go. Okay, finally. All right, so we're going to have to wait for another he's going to fly up and around and come back in. So we'll see what kind of winds they come in with on the northeast side. We're going to start to see also the impact of Irma on with respect to the landmass of Florida, and it's going to be a bit of a different interaction than it had with the landmass of Cuba. Here's the now soon the visible satellite. The eye is still pretty well defined on here. It's rather tight though. We might be seeing perhaps one of these eye wall replacement cycles going underway, where the eye wall decays and then a new eye wall forms. But that the motion, to me, the motion looks like it's kind of wobbling almost straight north. Maybe a little bit of a west component, but it is moving straight north. And again, I know it was basically, like watching a suspense movie last night, waiting for this northerly turn to take place. But it finally did happen as advertised. The hurricane did finally react to that trough that was developing to the west of Irma and turning it toward the north. Now, if you guys can just bear with me 1 second, I just want to refill my coffee here so I speak coherently. So just give me a second. And all right, so let's go back to I'm just reading some of your comments. Key West is getting slammed. We have winds gusting into the mid 80s now. Irma has managed to. That's right, Joyce Mack. It got itself a little bit of juice last night. Once it cleared the mountains of Florida, clearly the mountains did have an impact. As we said earlier, it probably disrupted the core long enough to keep this from getting back to a Category 5, which is great. And we're kind of on the bottom end of a Category 4. It has some room to strengthen a bit more, but it's running out of time and space. So it may get just a shade stronger, or more than likely, it may just kind of hold its own with where it is here, and that's not a that would, that's certainly far better than having it to strengthen back to a category 5. Ace, I did go to bed and I did get a decent night's sleep. Was able to get some shut-eye. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult. Sonny, good evening from Cambodia. Oh, good, you're here. I was just mentioning earlier about you being here last night. And Joyce back, yes. Right now, it's on the low end of the Category 4 scale. Let's see. Everybody's waving at each other. This is so very cool. We have good live coverage down here. Still haven't gone through the worst. Yeah, Rick Heller, I'm just watching some of the coverage here from on the network side. It seems to be very good and very informative. After a while, it's just kind of, you got a lot of reporters that are just standing outside in the rain and wind, but it's useful, at least for me, to be able to see visually what's going on. And best wishes to those of you. I know every one of us, certainly everyone up here in my area where I live, in the New York, Long Island, New Jersey area, Connecticut, Southern New England, Hudson Valley. Everybody, I think everybody knows somebody that either lives in Florida, and I think everybody has relatives that live in the state of Florida. We all seem to be connected to Florida in one form or another, and let's hope that everybody got their families safe and secure through all this. Either if they evacuated and left the state for a little while, or perhaps they are in shelters at the moment. Hopefully they are, and they are safe and sound through all of this, because everything, stuff can be replaced and rebuilt and fixed, but you can't replace your family member. And we should put a little perspective on that when we are armchair quarterbacking these sorts of things. There's no way you're ever going to nail this exactly correct. And I'm sorry, as I said, for those of you who really take joy in the fact, or find it amusing that and I'm not even saying that this is the case, but some find it amusing that certain areas were evacuated that perhaps in hindsight may not have needed to be. I don't know that that's the case, and I think the decision that was made at the time, with the information that was in front of them at the time, was the correct decision. And if they had to do it over again, I mean, I'm sure that perhaps they might look back and say, well, we maybe should have adjusted this a little here or a little there. But I'm also sure that they would make the same decision based on the criteria that they had in front of themselves at the time. John Sachs, cousins from Weston, they drove up to Orlando. Hopefully that's far enough north to escape the worst of it. It's going to get rocky inland for a while, though, with the core of the hurricane when it moves northward, depending on where the landfall is. So we're going to see, some gales that go all the way up the coast. Last night's JFO, GFS was calling for far greater intensification. It's good that it was wrong, but was this result of the eye shifting north more abruptly than modeled? It's possible. One of the things I remember from last night was that it had it, I think, down. You know what? I can put it up. Let's look at what the 6Z GFS did. Just got a text from Hillsborough County, Chris Bethune, that tropical storm force winds should start affecting the areas. Okay, yes. We have tropical storm force winds up the coast now. I'm just looking at some a live shot from CNN in Sarasota, where you can see the winds are all howling, and signs are blown down at this point. So, Sarasota still not, just getting into the gales at this point. Let's pull up the GFS here and see what's happening. What the model is showing. Just let me get down to that. Tropical tidbits. Here we go. Okay, so this was the NAM, and let me just I'll run this again for you. So we'll take the NAM through its motions, and you can see how this is just sometimes it's very frustrating. I have a lot of I do have a lot of programs working open right now that I need to be able to broadcast this, so it makes things run just a little bit slow. But you can see the NAM's view on all of this. So why don't we take a look at the GFS from last night, and we can see what it did. So let's back it up. And any day now. Okay, so at this point where we are at, which is at right now, the GFS has a 926 pressure for 8 a.m. and we're at 930. So not too bad. It's only off by it's 4 millibars too deep. So let's move it up one frame, which will be for 2 o'clock this afternoon, to see what the model has. And it has it at 921. So the GFS is indicating maybe a little bit of strengthening, but not to the extreme of what it was showing over the last couple of days, which is good. Doesn't take it down to, 921. If the wind field adjusts itself relative to the pressure, could possibly sustain a Category 5. But, again, we're still dealing with this lag that's going on. The winds haven't quite picked up to match the pressure. Again, that could be because of how the core might have been disrupted to some degree when it was over Cuba. And by tonight, it is inland. Looks like it is, west of Fort Myers, and looks like the track is a little bit further to the east. So maybe we're getting a little bit of an eastward nudge here. And moving it on from there, it starts to move more north-northwest, passing not too far to the east of Tampa, St. Pete. And from there, now we are into Monday morning, and the hurricane is now up into northeastern Florida, Jacksonville on one side, and Panama City, Apalachicola, those coastal cities on the west side, lying on the west side. At this point, with that pressure, it would be a Category 2. It might be a little bit weaker in terms of the wind field. So I think what we'll do now is we'll look at the 10-meter wind on the GFS and see what it has to say with regards to this. So just give me 1 second. Here we go. And okay, so we'll roll this along. We'll bring it up to the point of landfall, and where you see that really brownish area, so that would be the area of 100 knot winds, and all the purple is sustained winds of 50 knots or higher. So you can see that it's occurring up and down both coasts and even into inland areas. So with the hurricane making this kind of landfall where it is we are going to see some rather strong winds even in inland areas. And as we move on into this overnight, and this is at 1 a.m., this is when you start to see the winds. The stronger winds confine more to the coast as the landmass starts to have an impact on the core, but the circulation is over water on both sides. So that would continue to justify a very, very slow weakening as the hurricane again moves up into to the northwest. That part of the equation, remains also unchanged. which is good. It also, looks like once it rains itself out, it's not going to be, like we're not going to see crazy inland rains. I'm going to put putting the radar back up for you, and we'll check that out. And again, I apologize. Everything seems to be a bit slow on the uptake here, but there we go. The eye is right on the Keys, somewhere between Key West and Marathon Key at the moment. I'm going to leave that up there and come back to you guys, and we'll talk a little bit more. Let's see. I agree, Civilized Joke. You can only make decisions based on the information you have in front of you, not from haphazard guessing and armchair quarterbacking. I agree. They had a Category 5 hurricane on their hands. It had already struck the Leeward Islands. We have, the Bahamas, many of the islands in the Bahamas, communications remains completely cut off, so we have no idea the extent of the damage there, although from some of the stuff that I have seen, it was extensive to widespread. Yeah, exactly. That is what you do. You make the decision based on the information you have in front of you, and they did, they did absolutely the right thing, no question. Let's see. Joyce Mack, we got a foot of snow from a storm after. That's correct, Joyce. I remember that so clearly, and kind of those 2 weeks with after Sandy, sort of walking around in a daze and thinking, maybe locusts are the next thing we're going to see here, because it was just a very, very almost surreal thing. And then to have up to a foot of snow in the first part of November, but that's what happened. Let's see. I'm just trying to address your comments, Joyce. I think I'm on my third cup now. And yes, the coordination was very much on point from with regards to how local officials handled this. I have no issue with it, and I really think that anyone who does, you're wrong. Okay, sorry. Is there dry air on the lower part of the eye? There might be some. I haven't really looked at the water vapor loops to see really close about how, there might be a little bit of dry air getting entrained into this. As that trough deepens out to the west of it, it might be bringing down some dry air into the equation. That could be, and that may be a good thing. Maybe that's the reason why this thing hasn't, strengthened a bit more than what we've seen. And Miami right now is getting hit pretty hard with some heavy squalls moving through. We have wind gusts, in excess of hurricane force happening. This is the Key West radar that you're seeing here on the screen at the moment, and I will switch over to the Miami radar, and we'll take a look at it from this perspective. We do have a couple of severe weather warnings that popped up and then disappeared between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. They look like special marine warnings, and there are some very heavy squalls that are moving through the eastern Keys at the moment. And then you can see the eye wall is basically Key West is on the western end of that eye wall, and Marathon Key is on the eastern side. So it's in between there. That's the area that's getting ripped apart with the 100-knot winds, as indicated by the Doppler radar. That little outline you see that pops up over Key West was the Weather Service issuing an extreme wind warning. You got a hurricane one. I don't know. One of the things that I've been having discussions with folks at the Weather Service with regarding some of these warnings, and they've just got a lot of them now, and I think some of them are a bit much. You've got a hurricane warning up, and do you need to enhance that with an extreme wind warning? I don't know. It just seems to me like it kind of just duplicates it. It's a little redundant in my view, but someone may argue differently, and I'd be interested in hearing the other side of that argument. Let me, we'll go to back, let's go back. You can see the eye on on the Miami radar here from this perspective. So we'll go back to the Key West radar, and then you can see it up close. Let's see if we have any new observations. Gusting to 83. We have a gust to 106 miles an hour. Inside, we have, I don't know what the identifier of the station is here, a gust to 106 showing up inside that eye wall. That is midway between Key West and Marathon Key. That's amazing. You don't often see numbers like that on maps, even in these strong hurricanes. You know, sometimes these targets, with respect to where the observation stations are in between, where you wind up seeing the strong winds. You don't often see them. Numerous gusts now along the Florida coast as we go up the coast of 80 to 90 miles an hour. Here's an observation just offshore, gusting to 87, probably at one of the buoys, Fowey Rocks, gusting to 87. Gusts in around the Miami area. Let me see if we'll get a little closer. I see a gust of 71. Gust of 64. 71 is, doesn't give the station. 69 is Pompano Beach Air Park, is 38 gusting to 69. Let's see what this gust of 64 might be. I wish this map, you have to kind of point your mouse right on those little circles, and it's, you know, kind of difficult to do. Miami Loca Airport is 38 gusting to 61. And this is Miami International Airport, which is 49 gusting to 71. So Miami getting gusts to hurricane force at the moment. And look where the center, the eye is, down near the Keys. And look where Miami is, well north and east of that, and still getting winds to hurricane force. So the hurricane force winds that are going to be occurring up and down to the both coasts are definitely, that part of the forecast is going to verify. Let's go out to the west coast and take a look at what's happening there. And you can see the eye wall here, gust to 106, and I'm gonna just widen out a little bit so it'll be a little easier for me to take a look to see what I'm looking at. And we'll just wait for the observations to populate a little bit. Sometimes right, the winds here, you know, the gusts are a little bit less on the west coast at the moment. They're going to have to wait for the actual, you know, the core of the hurricane to move in, and those winds will pick up quite a bit. Getting some gusts up into the 40s and 50s, though, and we are going to see the winds will be especially as strong once the eye goes by and they get on the south side, and that's when you know, you're going to see the prolonged period of winds on the west side. You know, it kind of looks a little bit disjointed, but Miami's wind flow is coming in from off the water, whereas in West Florida right now the winds are, you know, blowing across the landmass, and the friction slowing it down and then out over the water. So the winds offshore, being from the east on the west coast of Florida, is actually pushing the water out. You might see the water go down quite a bit. And then once the eye of the storm passes and the winds shift around to the west, the water is going to come back in a big rush and a big way, and you're going to get your storm surge. So you know, there's going to be some very interesting phenomena going on with regards to how the storm surge plays out through all of this. So we'll go to. I'm going to go back to the Irma satellite here, and we'll get an updated view. I'll freshen up that loop for you, and we'll take a look at that. Just taking a long time to load these things up. Maybe back just over to the Key West radar, and I'll put that up for you. So just be patient. For the black screen will come in. There we go. So you can see the eye right over the Keys. Just a amazing morning here, watching nature in all its fury, doing all this. Let me just say once again a big thank you to Diane and Eric for hitting the super chat this morning. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go out and get myself a little bit of Starbucks coffee a little bit later on after I finish my home coffee. Again, thank you, and thank you for all of you who are here this morning on a Sunday morning. It's new. It's a new day. It's early in the day. I'm going to just going to have to wrap it up here for this portion, and we'll come back a little later because I have to go take care of some stuff on Facebook. But it looks like Carrie Suggs, good to be here, affecting Atlanta. Actually, it might get a bit windy up in through Georgia. We are going to get some gusty winds and heavy rains. Don't be at all surprised if you do see some wind gusts pass gale force up your way as the center of the dying tropical system moves along. But the good news is that it will be moving along, and it's not going to be something that's going to slow down and stall over you and produce mega amounts of rain. So that is a big plus for you up there. And yeah, you know, you're going to see as a guy broadcasting from his car. I'm watching CNN right now has someone in Key Largo. I mean, it's and that's in the eastern part of the Keys, so that's not even anywhere close to what's going on further west. And he is the video is kind of breaking up a bit, so they're having a lot of problems. The rain is just unrelenting, and so is the wind. You can see stuff blowing across behind him. I don't know how people stay through all that. I mean, I made it. We stayed here where I am. I'm 9 miles inland. When we had Hurricane Sandy here, so it's not as if I had any problems. I'm 100. I'm behind a hill that goes up almost 100 feet above sea level. So it's not as if I'm going to be inundated with any kind of coastal flooding. You have to be way south. But the wind was just unrelenting, and hearing your house moan from the wind, blowing, and the trees outside moaning because you can hear that bending. I don't know, that's kind of eerie, and I don't know how if you're in a location where you're getting a direct hit with the eye, I don't know how you do it. I would never stay. It's just I would not put my life and my family's life in jeopardy. I think if you have, small, especially, you have little ones, you shouldn't be putting their lives in jeopardy, in my opinion, let alone your own. It's so foolish. It's just so foolish. I don't get it. But we'll end the lecture here at this point, and we'll come back to this. As we're approaching almost an hour of live streaming here, so I'm just going to take a bit of a break. We'll come back to this a little bit later on, and everybody have a great day. If you're watching from Florida, please be safe and stay safe, and hopefully you have yourself secure and your family safe and secure as you go through this ordeal with Hurricane Irma, and then start to go back to maybe later tomorrow. You can start to go back to some semblance of normalcy. All right, folks, have a great day. We'll be back a little bit later on with some more as Irma continues to move its way up the East Coast.